Nominations have closed to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and next leader of the opposition. And 6 candidates have got the required nominations. Let's take a look at them. The bookies' favourite is former Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch, who launched her bid this weekend. In a Sunday Times opinion piece, she railed against what she called a nasty identity politics that seeks to divide. And she said the Tories should celebrate capitalism more vigorously. Robert Jenrick is currently the second favourite to win the leadership. He was most recently Immigration Minister under Sunak's government, but resigned because he didn't think the Rwanda plan was tough enough. In 2021, he was forced to resign as a housing minister after approving a £1 billion development by a pornographer he'd sat next to at a fundraising do. Tom Tugendhat has also entered the competition and is seen as a standard-bearer for the ever-shrinking liberal wing of the Tory party, though even he has talked tough on immigration, saying he would leave the European Convention on Human Rights if it were necessary to secure Britain's borders. Like Tugendhat, James Cleverly is also a former soldier and is the most senior member of the shadow cabinet to be going for the top job. Cleverly was Sunak's final Home Secretary and is currently the shadow Home Secretary. Another previous Home Secretary going for the top job is Priti Patel. She was a key ally of Boris Johnson, who stood by her even after an independent investigation found she had bullied her staff. And the outsider candidate in the race is the former Work and Pension Secretary, Mel Stride. If you don't know much about Mel Stride, don't worry, because all of these characters we're going to hear from a lot over the next few months. And that's because this contest will be going on until the 2nd of November, just over 3 months away. Helena, are you glad this is going to be going on quite so long? We got 3 months of this to look forward to.
Absolutely. I mean, it seems a very long time for them to choose a leader, but I guess they know that they're in the wilderness for a very long time, and the decision that they have to choose who becomes leader is going to be incredibly impactful, whether or not they can somehow claw back where they are electorally over the next 5 years, or indeed look so ridiculous that they push themselves further into irrelevancy. So taking their time on this particular issue to ensure that they maximize electoral outcomes, I guess that makes some amount of sense, although what it also does is allow them to infight for too long and make themselves even less unified as an opposition, which of course we all know on the left here, that doesn't lead to many electoral successes in the long run. As for the candidates who've put themselves forward so far, what we really have is a case of the good, the bad, and the totally batshit insane. So in the kind of the good camp, you've got James Cleverly and Tom Tugendhat, the kind of more centrist, closer to this kind of the centre-right versions of the Conservative Party MPs here, who broadly want to see themselves just as being a competent force to try and combat the Labour Party on their own platforms rather than try and push some kind of like move towards something more reactionary in terms of what the Conservative Party looks like. I know that Tom Tugendhat has kind of pivoted to talking about the European Convention on Human Rights, for example, but for me, I actually think that what he's doing there is just essentially doing something performative for the membership, like Penny Mordaunt was doing on her U-turn over trans people at the last time there was an election, rather than doing something that he genuinely believes in. No true One Nation Tory will want to so viciously attack something that is kind of a stalwart of Churchill's history in terms of geopolitics with regards to Europe. In the bad column, you've got Robert Jenrick, not only the man who had the whole painting over a mural for children, which makes him really look just genuinely kind of evil, really and truly, but also indeed somebody who helped approve against advice planning commission for a Conservative Party donor worth millions and millions of pounds. So he's someone who's got a track record of not being really in the public's good books. And there's also Mel Stride as well, who in his position as in the DWP was the person who oversaw this ridiculous kind of attack on people who are disabled, saying, not really disabled. And what we'll do, we'll stop giving them sick notes from actual medical professionals, but we'll subcontract that out to, I don't know, Capita or something to try and do independent assessments, i.e. just to try and judge them as being fit for work when they're not, which didn't really go down too well with many people, even in this kind of anti-welfare blitz of kind of media round that we've seen so far. But the last category is the dangerous one for the Conservatives, and that is Kemi Badenoch and Priti Patel, who are absolutely, they're totally batshit insane, really, at this point. Let's be real. Kemi, obviously more so. Patel, she's been putting down tracks with the Conservative Democratic Organisation. And for me, I actually think Patel is the favourite because of the kind of ways in which, whilst on the backbench, she's been trying to woo the membership at all of these little kind of events at conferences by trying to reach the base about the failure of democracy and carry the torch of Boris Johnson. Whereas Kemi Badenoch has too much kind of connection to the administration who lost the election. And on top of that, she's just weird, right? She's just a bit weird and just belligerent and kind of petulant like a child in the Commons, and that's not a good look. So if they do choose Kemi, who is the front runner, I think that's somebody who's definitely the accelerationist candidate. That if the Tories really want to speed themselves into irrelevancy, picking someone who's not very good on camera, not very good at putting her points across, but plays very heavily into the Conservative base, probably is the one who they probably will pick outside of Patel, but probably isn't the best for the Conservative Party's electoral chances moving forward.
I mean, she doesn't really focus on things that I think you kind of ordinary man in the street really cares about, because she talks a lot about like identity politics, cancel culture, like lots of stuff that, campus politics essentially, which, I think the Labour Party will be licking their lips if that's who they're sort of up against every Wednesday. Someone who isn't standing to be Tory leader is Suella Braverman. She has complained in the Telegraph. She's been branded mad, bad, and dangerous by her own party, and so won't lead it. Of course, some people have been branded bad, mad, and dangerous by their own party and decided that they still are fit to lead it. Jeremy Corbyn was one of those. So many Labour MPs called him all of those things. Maybe he's just tougher than Suella Braverman. Helena, are you surprised that Braverman has decided not to stand? Some people suggesting she could go over to Reform. Obviously there's not a spot to be leader of Reform because Nigel Farage has got it, but will we still be hearing a lot from her over the next few years, I suppose?
Well, I'm not surprised that she couldn't really gather support amongst, especially the Parliamentary Conservative Party, who she seems to have a vendetta against ever since that she was removed from her position as Home Secretary. She tends to make a lot of enemies. And we'll certainly be hearing from her, though. Like, it's clear that she sees her future in terms of her political career by pandering to special interest groups outside of Parliament, rather than being kind of somebody who'd be a mainstay of the Conservative Party's kind of forefront in their terms of their branding moving forward. We saw her going and speaking at the American Enterprise Institute, give a little jaunts to Israel to try and grift off of that culture war as well. And I think it's super out of touch. It was just the same with Kemi Badenoch. This isn't what normal people care about. In fact, it makes them seem incredibly out of touch when she's banging on about gender ideology and cultural Marxism in the press, which goes right down really well with the kind of myopic idiots who read the Telegraph. But in terms of people normal on the street, like, saying that the Conservative Party lost the election because they were too right-wing and were caught up in not being hard enough on trans people, that's literally the opposite. They were elected in 2019 on a platform of building all of these hospitals, the green industrial revolution, of uprating benefits in line with inflation, completing HS2, all of these kind of interventionist, kind of more kind of liberal political policies. Even like a ban on conversion therapy was a Boris Johnson manifesto commitment, and then they just changed leader and scrapped it completely. If anything, right, focusing on the culture wars is what made them look completely out of touch, when they should have been focusing on bread and butter issues like the cost of living crisis, like the NHS and the state of the public realm. So, I'm sure Braverman will try and be sniping from the sidelines, and if she doesn't essentially have enough of a platform in the Tories, I think the potential move to Reform is definitely on the cards, because although she'll probably have a bit of a clash of egos with Nigel Farage, she'll certainly be far more of a political firebrand as an iconoclast outside of the political class, rather than trying to do it from within.
I assume she's going to be looking for some spots on GB News, and GB News, one of their commentators, called her a racist last Saturday, and GB News have put out a statement sort of saying that was completely unacceptable for someone to say that on our channel. It's supposed to be the home of free speech. If you call Suella Braverman a racist, you're going to get sort of denounced on Twitter, which by the organisation, which is essentially what seems to have happened there.